The first haircut is inspired by a man called Roger Thompson, who was the second creative director of Sassoon. And what Roger did was he created the Isadora and the halo, and so he made the shapes softer and rounder. But he also introduced layering into the look, so that he started to work a lot more, with the natural form of the hair, which was something very new, because they'd kind of experimented with the Greek goddess. And, Vidal had gone to Harlem and he'd seen the way that the black kids were wearing their hair. And he said, wow, this is what we're about. Vidal would always say, this is what we're about. And he said it to people like Roger and Annie Humphreys and whatever. And they created the Greek goddess. But it was very much inspired by Roger, because he would look at the hair and, say, some of his things that he would say is that everyone has a way of looking beautiful. And probably many people have said that, but it's a very emotive thing to say to somebody. And the minute you engage a client with their hair, obviously, we're all hair involved to a large degree. But the moment you captivate somebody through the medium of their hair, you have them forever. And that's a wonderful power that we have as hairdressers. I believe it's one of the most rewarding things about what we do. And it actually, one of the things would would be, now I've heard various people saying this, but Vidal was the first person that I heard say this. And he'd say to me, Tim, give me your scissors. I think, oh, blimey, I've only got one pair, I hope he doesn't lose them. And he'd be standing in front of newspapers, magazines, TV crews, you name it. But he would make this one statement and he'd say, with this pair of scissors, we can change people's lives. And that is such a clever thing to do, because on all levels, it brings in the human aspect, because it's saying that, we can make people's lives better. But it also lifts the industry into something far more professional. I am not a poo and do hairdresser. I don't stand blow drying all day. I wouldn't want to do it. I've got no desire to do it. My role is to push purity in hair. And I understand that we're living in a different world today than we were in 1974 when I went to King Street in Manchester. And another colleague and friend of mine was doing hairdryers. And some hairdresser said, Tim Hartley can't blow dry hair to save his life. He's never done a blow dry in his life. Now, that person was badly uninformed. Because when I joined Sassoon in '74, yes, we had all this wonderful natural hair, but you had these beautiful, long, swinging Isadoras, bobs, page boys, halos, and invariably the client would have curly hair. And that was in the barber shop. That was not even in the women's salon. One-length haircuts, and they had wavy, curly hair. And it was my job at 8:30 in the morning, to blow dry their hair. And I soon got a reputation for being the best blow dryer in the salon, I promise you. And even, people would have clients, and they say, oh, see if that boy can come up from the barber shop and blow dry. They didn't even, I was new. I'd not been there very long. I was training. And I used to go up and blow dry, I could blow dry difficult hair. So I've done all that, but I just choose not to do it now, because I feel as though there are so many other things that my time can be well spent really selling the ideal of hair. It's the ideal of hair that interests me, and it's that extra that comes with all of that. But we'll cover, more stuff off. I like those shoes; they're great, aren't they? Whew. So I've been upstaged, am I? Can we have all we need is a beautiful girl, isn't it? So let's have our first model. What a wonderful day it's been. It's a wrap now for Hairdressing Live. We had a wonderful show, wonderful team. Everything looks stunning, and it's all for you. If you enjoyed our little show, it makes it all worthwhile. I'm extremely fortunate to have been part of the Sassoon golden years. Vidal was a very generous person in many respects. And I feel an exercise like this is an exercise in generosity because it's about, information being accessible to people all over the world. Training is always going to be our most important tool. Hairdressing Live, the future of education. I'm Tim Hartley, and this is my masterclass. She's got a lovely face, I think. She's gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. And she's got a bit of hair on, for me to cut, which is Fantasia. And I had to... Now, I've got a black Sassoon comb that somebody special gave me in America, and I seem to have mislaid it. But I'm going to use a Sassoon comb, which is such a classic saw cut, ordinary, boring comb. I used to love the DuPont combs. I do have all those fancy Japanese. This is a fancy Japanese comb, actually. But I tend to sort of go with this would be the thing of my choice. I have my own scissors that are made in Osaka, just outside of Osaka in the north of Japan. My friend Hiro has a salon there, and he helped me to liaise with people, with the manufacturer there. And it took 2 years for us to develop these, and I promise you they're the best that are available internationally. So if you're interested, because I think the tools are important. So the minute that I saw, it's Molly, isn't it? It is. Oh, God. Hello. As soon as I saw Molly, her hair's got a lovely wave in it, and I thought of a haircut which was a legend at Sassoon's, and it's a shame Johnny's not here today because it's one of his favourite haircuts, and I really was kind of, I thought of him when I decided to do this particular haircut. And the other thing I was thinking was interesting in hair is to cut, shapes on the interior geometry of the hair, not just on the outline. So, you'll see some work from me today on the outline, but we're going to begin with the internal geometry of the hair. How's that sound? I should just shut up and cut some hair. Is that what you're thinking? All right, so I'm going to start in the back. And I go to too many hair shows and I don't see any hair coming off and I don't see anything happen with the hair. What's going on these days? You go to hair shows and nobody cuts hair anymore. They just fiddle with it, don't they? And then they kind of say how wonderful they are and you can, whoop, does that, and but it does nothing. Then nothing changes, I find that really odd. So, I don't fiddle it. I'm not a fiddler. I'm not a hairbender, and I'm not a hair fiddler. So, we're going to begin through here. Dean, can I introduce you to Dean Bradwell? He's the most amazing guy that I work with. And if you that'd be great. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go from tight in the middle out into the length on the outline. And I'm using the wide end of the comb. And I'm lifting so that I keep a little bit of length on the edge, but I start to create a more exaggerated head shape on the interior. So lifting nice and high, coming in here, lifting each time, and coming out into that little bit of length that we have on the edge. And I can sort of work on that a little bit more later. But the haircut that I'm sort of paying homage to, is Roger Thompson's washbowl haircut. That's what it's called. And so I can see the previous section on the underneath. Coming through. And I'm just being mindful not to take any length off the edge. I like, nice, shiny, healthy, expensive-looking hair, color-wise. And I think that's sort of, I see some amazing things, with color, but you can't beat a really great, natural-looking, shiny head of hair with a really strong shape. I think that it's something, very special. And I feel as though these sort of classic techniques are kind of really where it's at these days in hair, because I think the sort of half up, half down stuff, really wild hair, although I have got a wild haircut to show you later, is just sort of can be a little bit difficult, I think, especially for young people, So I'm coming from that short point in the middle here and out into my length. And what's happening is that the hair is sort of folding around the natural head shape, and it will just kick out a little bit on the edge, I'm hoping. And I'm not frightened of going down short around the crown here, because it's going to help to push the hair around the head shape and make it do something. We always used to say, like when I was teaching, or if somebody was teaching me, they'd go, "Tim, the hair's not doing anything." And I'd go, "Why is it not doing anything?" "Because it's not the right length." And I'd be, right, okay. So we're learning the technique, but we'll also have to learn that certain lengths of hair will make it react in the right manner. It's a lot of things to think about, isn't it? Hey? Yeah. Not in the beginning, though. It took Vidal a long time. He didn't really take to me at first. I think it was a hard sell, a northerner. It wasn't really until 1990 that I collaborated with Vidal, began to. And we did the launch of international education in China, which is a huge, market today, obviously. And that was a really amazing thing, because he said to me, "Tim, we have to do a show for the hairdressers." I was like, wow, so okay. We weren't required to do that. He wanted to do it. And he was absolutely correct. It was such an important thing to do. But the funny thing was that when all the people arrived, it looked like a chef's convention. They were all in these white coats. They were all men. They all looked exactly the same. They all had the same side parting, funny haircut. You know what I'm talking about, don't you? I'm sure you were around. That was when I first met you. And it's 20-odd years ago. And you know what? Some people still think that they don't know that Vidal's dead, and they think I'm Vidal in China. And we had the cultural police following us around. And Annie Humphreys came up with a technique called hidden colour. And I still think they're banging out hidden colour. They do all these techniques and they put them all underneath the hair so you can't see them. We did that for a reason, because we weren't really allowed to colour hair. It's quite pretty, isn't it? Can you see? Gorgeous. She's gorgeous, isn't she? Okay, so I'm just going to continue with my sectioning, and I'm over directing the hair all the way back into the crown so that I save all the length in the fringe. So I've got to keep that little chugger at the front there. If we lose that, we're sunk. Who's that?
Ray Arrington.
Oh, Ray Arrington. He was from Manchester as well. And we used to strut down King Street in Cuban heels and size 28 waist Fiorucci jeans. It's a lifetime ago.
Staff used to get taxis to work because they would wear ball gowns, ballerina gowns, the men would wear high heels.
And that was just the boys.
So how exciting was
Well, I mean, it was... I think it was a whole other world. I can remember the first soiree, and this woman came from London called Caroline Hayes, and she ran the school in London. And Caroline had spent the whole day putting lipstick on. She had fuchsia permed hair out to here, and she was in a backless gold lame Anthony Price dress with a fishtail on the back. She was just teaching. She did the staff training, and she looked like that every day.
What was amazing about that period, Tim, like just now, you've maybe got one or two egos in the salon who have that experimentation.
Yeah.
The Sassoon of the 70s, there were so many, the salons were full of characters like that. How did you, as a creative director globally, control that environment?
Well, I think the thing was not to control it really, but to praise, people and and to encourage individuality. But I used to love the fact nowadays I go into a salon and I think, good God, they need to get their hair washed for a kick-off, and get a pair of decent shoes on, and and smarten up a bit. Where's your pretty sister? The ugly one's here today. And I used to say that to people sometimes, and apparently you're not allowed to say that anymore. But I would not employ somebody unless they knew how to put a red lipstick on well. Because I would just think, well, that person isn't involved in the way they look. And if they don't care about the way they look, how can they possibly make somebody else look good?
And was Vidal tough with that, and Annie tough with that feeling?
Vidal said to me, I wore a Yoji Yamamoto outfit the first time I met Vidal, and he said, you look like a priest. I said, thanks very much. I said, it cost me a lot of money, this habit. And he said, oh, well, I'm sure it did. And he made some kind of joke out of it. But he'd always make remarks about, my shoes or, something. He'd have an opinion about it. And, back in the day in Bond Street, the managers had to wear, and the creative team, had to wear suits.
Now, the clientele also then were full of celebs and prince and princesses and
hookers,
superstars and everyone. How could
Did you see that British Scandal programme with Mandy Rice-Davis and
Christine
Keeler? They were clients at Sassoon's. Nice, huh? God, what do I do on the other side? No, now. No, I'm fine. I'm all right. Okay, so I'm going to come up again, lift, and I'm going to work into my hand on this side. So again, let's leave that little chugger on the end. There's no such thing as a chugger, but I like that word. It makes people laugh when I'm teaching them. I made an interesting, I think, remark last week, because when I'm using my scissors and my comb, but the thing I'm using perhaps more than anything is my personality. And to be successful in hairdressing, there's so many people. I think you must be a people hater sometimes. there are so many people in salons that are dull as dishwater. They don't talk to anyone, and they just, I think it's so sad. Here we have an opportunity. You were saying about, Sassoon in the 70s. We had wonderful girls at the top as well. There was this amazing woman, Herta Keller, and she was a German lady. She just cut hair amazingly. And there was another one called Pat Lewis, an Irish girl. And they both were at least 3 or 4 days a week at Vogue. And every Vogue cover from 1974, 76, all the way through, was either by Herta Keller or Pat Lewis. And, they'd get their fingers into the hair and do amazing and beautiful, beautiful work. As did, Roger. He was one of the first. They were sort of some of the first people to go out and do editorial hair. So that was really very, very important.